Hey everybody, welcome to Living Healthy. Dr. Gary here, and I have my friend Suzanne Carpenter with me today. Suzanne is the founder of Carpenter 180, and I'm so glad to have her here with us today. We're going to talk about some things about, we're dealing with addiction with alcohol and drugs. There's a lot of things that we deal with, resetting the neurotransmitters of the brain for brain restoration. And there's lots of kinds of addictions that people have, not only drugs and alcohol, but gambling, sex, and food. We're going to talk about food today.
Food.
How individuals wind up using food to cover up pain. And that's what a lot of problems are with addiction. People are trying to hide pain. Mm-hmm. So Suzanne's going to tell us, and she's got an exciting story, fascinating story of her own life, what happened with her, mm-hmm. and where she came from, where she is today.
Yeah.
So Suzanne, would you explain to us how your journey?
My pleasure. I'm glad to be here with you. Thank you for letting me talk with you and talk with the people that know and love you so much. It's my honor, really.
I'm so glad.
Thank you. So, I went through most of my life with a secret, a really big secret that had like a shame umbrella over it. And I didn't ever plan to talk about this. And I think that a lot of people feel trapped in a cage like that in some way. So I was born and raised in Michigan, and my Midwestern value is wake up every single day and be a good girl. Add value and play hard, give everything 110%. And I did that. So I'm 6'2", so I always have a different perspective on everything. But I think the fact that I've always been so tall, when I was going through the formative years, I wanted to fit into a box that my body was never going to fit into. So I started going through this cycle of life where I had the negative talk track in my head. Again, I think because I wasn't the average. I was so much of an outlier because of my height. I didn't feel like I was enough. Or I wake up every morning and it was just that brutal voice talking back to me in the mirror. What that did is it made me want to find control someplace, and I started that with food. So I was never the typical really thin girl who had an eating disorder. In fact, I was a bulimic, and bulimia is strange because you don't really reach the ideal weight because of the binge and the purge cycle. So I, at one point before I was ever pregnant, was 226 pounds by living this lifestyle of starving myself and exercising as an eraser, and then using and abusing laxatives. So I was hungry, shaky, tired all the time. I could feel energy in my body. I was miserable, but I was trying to show up and quiet that voice. And I was trying to do it by fitting in. So fast forward a whole bunch of years, you know how life will throw you a curveball.
Right.
I ended up in the hospital with a bowel obstruction in 2009. And that was the first time I ever spoke about what I was doing to myself to the physician. And that was the first time I ever thought maybe what I'm doing is bad. It had been so many years where I was just pedaling along. Okay, so a couple more years go by, and I have 4 kids. And at an event that I was attending, one of the speakers posed this question. You say you would die for your kids, but would you change for them? And I didn't like that question at all. That question meant I was going to have to do something, because all of a sudden I started losing sleep. I started thinking, if I don't get myself help and model this right for my 2 girls, they're very likely to grow up and talk to themselves the same way I'm talking to myself. They're very likely to repeat the way that I'm eating, what they're seeing me do or not do. And I could not stand that idea. I couldn't handle the thought that they would talk to themselves the way I talk to myself, because I would never speak to them that way. I would never let them hear somebody speak to me the way I was speaking to myself. I knew I needed to get some help with this. So this was years ago, and I finally stepped into bravery and reached out and said, I think I need somebody to help me learn what I'm missing. And through there, I walked through the steps of recovery. And I say I'm still a recovering eating disorder, or have a recovering eating disorder, because I have to have framework in place. I have to still monitor, but it's been amazing, this journey of laying down that and then now paying it forward.
Right. Well, what a fascinating story. And I really appreciate your candidness of sharing that, because so many people suffer with issues with food. You know, they're carb addicted. They're addicted to food to feel good, and emotional things happen, and they choose food, and then they've created that habit to take place, so they always jump for the food. And I heard you saying that with education and what you learned, and that there was a change that was going to have to take place. And that change begins with paying attention to what we're thinking and thinking about what we're putting in our mouth before we do it.
Right.
And you know, I think for all of us, we've dealt with that. You know, you don't grow up thinking about what you're like, I want that, give me what I need. And for someone that we know that what we're dealing with alcohol and drugs, or brain restoration for people with anxiety, depression, and helping them reset their brain, it's being conscious of what you're thinking about. You know, being present and, you know, pausing before you jump like you're talking about. But that just is not a normal procedure. You have to be trained to do that, don't you think?
I think we have such a go, go, go society, and fast, 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 that we're not being very contemplative and really thinking things through. Right. So a lot of it's a fast food society, it is a microwave society, it's convenience. So it's grab and go without a lot of thought about what is the long-term effect of this going to be.
Right. Microwave society in a crock pot body, right?
That's right. That's right. That's right.
So, you know, the thing you mentioned that I heard you say about emotions, could you speak on that a little bit? How choosing to eat food for emotions?
Oh, this was fascinating to me when I started to understand this. So there's a difference between emotional hunger and physical hunger. And I think that you could use the word hunger in any addictive state. You'd speak to that on excellence. But so in actual hunger, I had to learn, and then I now teach people, emotional hunger comes on pretty quick. You know, you might be mid-afternoon, you're just working away, or you're with the kids and you're really engaged in something, and then all of a sudden you think, man, I need some pretzels and some chocolate chips. Well, the emotional hunger you might be feeding is fatigue and tired, because it's later in the day and you've been 17 kinds of awesome all day long, and your body's wearing out. And to solve that pain problem, go get fast food. Go get a quick food, a carb, chocolate chips, pretzels. So it might also be that you have something you don't want to be doing that's coming up. You're fatigued, or you have to write an email or have a confrontational phone call, or a difficult relationship's going to be coming home from the office, or, you know, any number of things. Your body might say, I need comfort. I've got something coming up that makes me feel uncomfortable, and the way to numb that out is with food, and it often comes on really, really fast. So I think about like the emotional spectrum and the feeling spectrum. Over here, this is something that's so hot and painful you can't sustain, like say putting your hand on the stove.
Right.
And then over here is something so great it also doesn't sustain, like orgasm or endorphins or Christmas morning. You know, they're the two extremes. Okay, so we're experiencing pain, and we as humans are wired to want to go to the happy side. And our pain could be any number of things: boredom, stress, fatigue, overwhelm, uncertainty, relationships. Anything can factor into this pain we're having, and we want to move away from it. So society would frown more on addiction to drugs, or overusing alcohol, or gambling, or stealing, or driving too fast, or pornography. Any number of these things still might make you feel better, although society frowns on it, so maybe we do a little less of that. But we still need something to intervene and stand in the gap to make us feel better. So just maybe we're going to use food and Ben & Jerry's instead. So let's cause our problem that's sitting right here. It's stress. So we think we're feeling the stress. The body wants you to feel more comfortable. Let's turn to Ben & Jerry's, because Ben & Jerry's is going to put a blanket over that stress while you're over here eating it, because now you're going to feel better. The sugar's going to taste good. You'll get a little endorphin rush. The problem is the ice cream bowl is finite. There's a limited amount. Or the chip bag, you're eventually going to get to the end of it. And what's going to happen is the food is gone, and eventually your blood sugar is going to go up, and then it's going to crash, and that feels bad, and then your belly hurts. But ultimately, the numbing is going to go away from that problem, and we're left now with the problem and the regret from the overeating. Now I say that because 2 out of 3 Americans are overweight, 1 out of 3 is obese. The diet industry is growing still. So that is still an epidemic that we're having. So what we want to do is next time, thinking about, to your very original question here, what is it that you're feeling that you don't necessarily want to be feeling that we're covering up with the food? Because it really starts to get into that underneath the food. What's the thing that caused you in the first place to need to turn to the food? Because that's what we need to be looking at.
Right. It's the feeling. The feelings. The feelings can be fickle.
Yes.
Right? They're up and down and all around, low. It can be high and low, and those feelings start in our brain. It begins with a thought before the action takes place. So that brings us back to helping to change the chemistry in the brain. If we can change that thought and help an individual, like you said, that question came to your mind about your children. You could die for them, but would you change for them? And that's the question we all have to ask. Are we willing to change? Which road are we going to follow, and which behavior are we going to pursue? So, what we do with changing the brain with neurotransmitters is help that calming, a lot of times the anxiety or those feelings of depression or those things that would drive someone to these substances, whether it be food, drugs, or alcohol. It's still a driving force there because, like you said, we want to feel good. We do a start with, I say we have to start, like you said, that thought. So we've got to start in the brain.
Yes.
It starts right there for that action before we even have that action to reach for. So, if you want to, you have some ideas and things that you do, some tips that you, for people and different things, just to help them out, a little tip starters.
That's right. Yeah. That's right, because I think that, okay, do you remember, of course you do, when you were studying for your exams or the big tests and you'd be sitting at your desk and you'd have all the books in front of you, do you remember that feeling of massive overwhelm of,
oh yeah,
I don't know what I need to know?
Exactly. Sometimes it happened yesterday.
Right. And then after the exam, you're walking to the car. I mean, I know that my high schoolers feel this way, and you can almost feel the information leaking out of your ears. Like you could only hold it in for that short amount of time. Nutrition feels like that. Nutrition is so overwhelming. There's so much information that for somebody who's not a nerd like me that wants to sit and read it and piece it apart, it's easy to stop before you ever start because you have that feeling of all those books on the desk before the test.
Right.
So I used to teach first grade once upon a time, and I always joke that I had that superpower that once I understood science, I could pull it down and explain it in a way that a first grader can get it. And what I was missing was the basics of nutrition that I should have been taught when I was in first grade. And that's why I pulled out the company Carpenter 180, is to come alongside more like the teacher to just shore up some of the grocery store and the day in, day out fundamentals and have it not be so hard. Because what I know is success leaves clues. And people are successful in multiple areas of their life. They might just be struggling in one area. Some of them might lead them right into your clinic so you can start with those thoughts. Others might be they're just missing information. So no matter what I really want to message out to the world is we're going to just learn about the grocery store and shopping protein, fat, and fiber and putting that on our plate. Protein, fat, and fiber at every meal makes maintaining or losing weight no big deal. And the reason I talk about fiber is because it's the 0-calorie part of a carbohydrate. Fiber has no calories. It'll swell in your belly when you drink water. It'll act like a broom in a sponge, soak up calories, fats, and toxins, and usher them out of the body. It has tremendous health properties in terms of helping to balance blood sugar and cholesterol and reduce risk for heart disease and inflammation and diabetes. Like the health benefits of a high fiber diet are tremendous, but in terms of weight management and weight loss, they're superior because you can have weight loss without hunger. You can feel full, your stomach will stretch.
You have live foods that way too. So you guys eat your broccoli.
That's right.
Have your fiber.
That's right.
It is. We're in a society. There's a lot of dead food. People are consuming foods that aren't alive. So I encourage our patients to eat live foods. vegetables and fruits, those things that are alive. And in our society, a lot of things aren't grown to maturity. You have to almost look for that, find a friend or somewhere, a farm that you know that foods are grown to maturity for that. So you get the fullness of those foods, yeah.
You know, and I think you would agree that we want, we didn't get where we are overnight, so we're not getting out of where we are overnight, but most people are looking for like Tinkerbell to come in with the pixie dust and just make it easy and fix it.
Right.
Okay, so that's just not the reality.
Right.
However, I cracked the code really with just being able to say, what if we could turn off 8 hungry hormones so that it was just easier to not have food cravings?
Right.
What if your biology was working in your favor rather than against you? So if a day in, day out, you can just get in the pattern of breakfast, lunch, bridge snack, and dinner, protein, fat, and fiber at every meal, we're going to turn off all these hungry hormones, balance blood sugar. You're not going to feel like you're on this roller coaster, which your emotions follow. Right. When you start to feel like you're on a kiddie roller coaster or on, you know, just riding the wave nice and easy, it's a lot easier, but it requires going first. It requires you being brave to go to the grocery store. It requires you finding somebody who can help you with what to put on your plate. That's actually a lot more simple than you think, but when you're first learning anything new, there's a tension and a struggle, and it feels hard because you've never done it before. But when somebody has what you want, like say food peace, or they've been able to walk to the other side of an addiction or a problem, and those people have found a solution that's simple and that's practical and not a fad, those are the people you want to listen to for advice.
Right. You want to hang with the winners.
That's
and
right.
You know, if you look at the foods that are out there, if the packaged foods, and you look how much sugar, just look at the backs of where the information is there of how much sugar is in every food that you buy that's packaged. And that content and is increasing the amount of carb addiction for people. You know, there's a problem there. There's a real challenge there with the consumption of sugar with people. So, you know, I'm so glad you're here with us today, Suzanne. And, you know, if you want to know more about controlling your eating or to lose weight or to be able to reset your brain so you can make right choices, so give us a call at 470-533-8558 to learn more. And thank you so much, Suzanne, for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.